Google Forms. A lot of you mentioned in the beginning that Google Forms is probably your top Google tool. And so this is another fun and pretty simple way to use Google Forms to have a little fun with your students, to make a lesson engaging or interactive and all that great stuff. So thank you again for choosing this. And just so you're aware, this Choose Your Own Adventure activity thing that I found is something I used twice this past semester, discovered it, kind of learned more about it. And my students were super engaged, had a lot of fun with this, got a lot of good positive feedback from them. So that's why I'm excited to share this with you. Don't forget, please sign in. And also, if you haven't done so, please open this slideshow up and follow along with me. There are some links I'm going to ask you to open up, and those links are in there. I'll try to keep posting those in the chat as well. But let me put that in just one more time, just in case. And we're going to get started. And oh, one more thing too, with questions, regarding questions or anything, please put them in the chat. I'll be going back and forth between the slides and the chat so that I can answer as many questions as I can possibly for you to help you understand. And so let me know if you have any questions, and I'm happy to work with you on it. So first things first, this is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to first dive in our deep dive. First, I'm going to give you, have you check out an example of a Choose Your Own Adventure, one that I created regarding a unit I teach. I'm a world history teacher, and I did one during our Industrial Revolution unit. So you'll check that out today. I'm going to show you, we'll discuss the types of activities that you can use this in your classroom real quick. And then I'm going to go through how you can build one yourself, give you tips and tricks to easily build your adventure activity for your students. It does take a little bit of front loading on the teacher part, not too crazy, but it can be confusing if you don't do it properly, or there is a chance you could screw up a little bit on your Choose Your Own Adventure activity using Google Forms. So my tips and tricks will really help you, so that way it's not confusing and it's easily transferred to the Google form, and I'll explain all that today. The other thing I want to share is just my contact information. If you ever need anything from regarding this or any other tech thing, I am a tech coach at Everett Alvarez High School. So I'm happy to help with, if you need some extra support with this or anything else. There's my contact information. Again, if you have access to the slides, you have it. That's my email and my Google Voice number that you can contact me as well. So that is what we're going to be looking at today. So let's get started. And I'm looking at the chat real quick. Carlos, let me know if you still can't access it. We'll get that fixed for you real quick. It should be public to all, but if you're having trouble, that could be from the bit.ly. But I would also post, yes, I'll copy and paste what Miss Barrera posted up, the full link for you. There you go. Thank you. Let's get going. So I want to give you guys some time to check out an example for me of a Choose Your Own Adventure activity. Again, this is the one I gave to my students during the Industrial Revolution, about life in the factory, what a life was like for a factory worker. This one was kind of a fun one. It was the first one I did. I did a little test run. I did this during a lesson after I front loaded some content, and then they got to experience life as a factory worker. And the question I asked them is, can you make it through the day in a factory without getting fired or worse? So there's a link here for you to click. This link is going to take you to the start of the Choose Your Own Adventure activity. And I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes. I'd like you guys to go through 5 minutes. I'll put the link in the chat here. But I want to give you guys 5 minutes to have some fun and go through and see how far you can get, what you can see and what you notice about it. And then we'll come back and discuss in about 5 minutes. So I'm going to start the timer. Go ahead, have fun with it, explore it, just get to know it a little bit on the student side first. Check back in 5 minutes. All right, guys, that was about 5 minutes. Give you a little time to peek through, and it's relatively short, I think, so a lot of you can get through and do it multiple times. Did anyone make it to the end? There was an end. There was an end. Did anyone make it, or were you just fired the entire time? There was a route to the end. Actually, I think 2 routes. I don't know if anyone did. Let me know in the chat if you did. But this was, like I said, an activity I gave my students as a kind of a test run of sorts on this type of activity, a little bit of fun. Sorry, Ms. Barrera, fired at all times. Sorry. But my students, like I said, they had a good time with it. It solidified a lot of the knowledge that we were teaching them about factory life and how workers were treated during the Industrial Revolution in factories. And it helped them, like I said, it was a good kind of what I noticed, a lot of, for them, a good reminder and something that stood into their minds when they were assessed on the knowledge of the Industrial Revolution. This was something that was easily like, I remember doing that activity, what happened, and they had a lot of fun with it. So I want to ask you guys a question. If you could share in the chat, please. Stop the timer there. How can you use this type of activity in your classroom? How do you see yourself using something like the Choose Your Own Adventure activity in your class? If you can go ahead and share some ideas that you see in the chat, I'd appreciate it. I'm curious what you guys think. How could you use this type of activity in your specific classroom? I'm going to go over some, but I want to see what you guys think. If you have any ideas on how you can do that, go ahead and open up the chat, type that out. Vocabulary development. Thank you, Ingrid. That's fantastic. Good way to do it. Nice. Yes, Ms. Barrera. So social studies. There you go. Zutsu, right. Would you do it in a lesson? Would you do it in a test? Foreshadow. I like that. Pre-thinking, foreshadowing our novel. What might a character do? I like it. Thank you, Carlos. Review for assessment. Excellent. There's when we talk about this Choose Your Own Adventure, and when I've kind of going through, it's really nice. Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Barrera. Again, getting to know you activities. Writing practice, where students have to add the correct paragraphs to get a viable essay that makes sense. That's a great idea. I didn't even think about it that way either. That's a great way to do it. Building background before reading a novel. Excellent. Yes. I did not try this. I also taught a section of English this year. I did not try that out on them. But this is all kind of good ideas of how you could use it for sure. So excellent. Thank you guys for sharing. Yes. So there's a lot of ways that you can use this type of activity in your classroom and across various subjects. Like I said, I come from a social studies background, but I definitely can see ways that math classes, science classes, English classes can utilize this type of activity in their classroom. And so that's what I hope that you guys can see today as we move on. So let me talk about some of the ways that you could use this, how it could be used in your classroom. First things first, introduction of new content. If you're wanting a way to introduce new content, some of you mentioned in the chat about introducing a new novel in your classes, that's a great way to do it. So you can get students engaged with new content, maybe as a bell activity, a fun setup to the knowledge that they're about to learn. So I wrote, as an example, social studies classes, you can utilize this as a fun way for students to learn about what life was like for people living in the time period you're studying. It gives students an idea, like if you saw what the factory life simulator or Choose Your Own Adventure here, they saw what life was like, how easy it could be to lose your job when you're not protected by laws or regulations, and how easy it was to get fired or hurt or whatever. So this helped them build that knowledge. Another way you could use it is as a lesson or a major part of a lesson. Have students engage the activity, learn new vocabulary concepts, all while trying to get through the story. One way that I saw online of other teachers that have used this in the past, students have used this, or teachers have used this to have students practice narrative writing for English classes. So what they've done, for example, is I've seen students go through a Choose Your Own Adventure activity, and then they have to write a narrative about the character, make up the character name, give setting, and go through the plot that they went through on the Choose Your Own Adventure activity. And they'd have to write the character's story as well. Another way is an assessment. This is something that is interesting. I have not tried this, but I've seen it online. You can assess student knowledge based on their answers they give. Can they make it through the story, if you will? So students finding, for example, you can use this in math class. Students find the correct answers to math problems, maybe math word problems, by choosing their answers for the story. Another way just to see if they can make it to the end or go back and make corrections, figure it out, and keep going. That way, again, they're on this quote unquote adventure, but still working on the content and building that knowledge. So that is some ways. You guys had some great ideas as well, and it was pretty cool, and I like that. So real quick, I wanted to jump back into the chat. Looks like we're good. What I want to spend the rest of the time that we have together on, which we have about a half hour, we may not use this whole time, is exactly how to build it. And that's probably what's going to take us the good amount of time. But I wanted to give that background, have you see it, know how you can use it. I hope you're already brainstorming some ideas. And so I want to talk about the ways that we can do this. So to put together a choose your own adventure activity and to do it properly, but also not to get lost in building all this stuff, it's important that you have these two things ready to go. You should access either a pen or paper in front of you, or have Google Draw open, or Google Draw, which, as you may know, if you've seen, I'll share, this is what it looks like. It's basically docs.google.com/drawings. This is where you can build your template, or excuse me, build your storyboard, if you will, for Choose Your Own Adventure. And as well, you want to have available to you an open Google form, okay? Those two things are super important, obviously, for this. So what I want to do is kind of walk through quick ways on how you build it. Take questions from you guys if you need help, questions that can be answered. And then once we're all kind of through it, you guys have your idea. When we get back into the sandbox at 11:15 or so, we will give you guys those time to work on it. So let's get into this. So I want to talk about Google Draw. This is where you can organize your thoughts or ideas. If you are a pen and paper person, it's very similar to this. And I'm going to go over the things to consider here in just a second. But if you could do me a favor and hit this bit.ly, this link right here, bit.ly of the Factory Life Draw. I want to show you what I created from the Factory Life document. Or you saw that Google form, but this is what I created here. And as you can see, this is kind of a template where I wrote down a lot of different things. And you'll notice here, for example, and I'll zoom in here so you can see it a little bit better. You'll notice here, I started off with one box, and I actually, for me, wrote down number one, and I wrote down the description of what the question is. You saw that question, and then I put option 1 and option 2. And so I made sure then I had 2 boxes. So you could either go one way or the other. So if they chose alarm clock, they went here. If they choose the friend coworker, then they went here. And you'll notice that using Google Draw, I created these boxes, and then I created these little lines. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a second on a blank one. And I wrote out the description, and then I continued to build. A couple things that you should see right here is that I numbered everything. Page 6, page 7, and that numbering is super, super important. You want to number everything out. You'll see it goes to like page 16 right here. There's page 18, 17, 19, 12. It does go everywhere, and I'll explain why. It's just kind of the way I built it. But it's important that you do it like this to, again, show all of the different angles. Oops, don't want to move that yet. That you can go. But that is what your setup would be. And the setup is super valuable. Because without this setup, you're trying to do it straight on Google Form, you will more than likely get lost on the certain things that you could do. So let me go back to why it's important to use Google Draw. Or like I said, you could see, you could do that very easily on a piece of paper with a pen and paper as well. So I give you some things to consider when building your situations. When you're building your storyboard, you want to, like I said, number each box. It is important because it will help you build that Google form later. The Google form that you're going to build is going to have different sections. Each sections will correspond to the number on your draw. That just, again, is helping you organize. I recommend that you put your descriptions in each of the boxes as well to organize your thoughts. That's what I did. It made life easier for me building the form, so I knew just which box said what and which areas went where. And then I said make lines to each choice. It keeps track of which section goes where, again, for Google Forms. So I gave you an example. You could see the different routes it goes. Google Draw is perfect on this. And what I want to show you is how it works real quick. Google Draw right now. And here's an example page. So what I did is I created a new draw, Google Draw. I did it through my Drive. You can do that. You just hit new and then you go down to create draw. And it's very simple, really. And then first things first, you want to build your opening section. You just hit text box and you create it. And there's my text box. There are a couple things you want to do, like you want to put like the border so you see the box. You may want to lower the font a little bit, but I would say this is box 1, and I would write, I should probably make it bigger for all of you. This is my example. Choose A or B, and then your choices are A, B. Very simple. So I'm using this example. Obviously, you'd be more creative in your story and what you're building. So the next thing I want to do is build a line. I want to build where am I going next. So I have 2 choices, A or B. Some of you may want 3 or maybe even 4 choices if you're feeling creative. That's great. What you do is you just get a line. This little button right here up here that says line, that's what you're going to click. And you'll see that your cursor is turned into kind of a little crosshair there. And what you do is you just drag, you click and hold, and you drag to where you want it to be. So I would do this. Now, I'm doing this relatively big so you can see. You may want it to be a little bit smaller for on your end because you want to have more room, but that's okay. And you'll see I have A and B. So on the text box, I'll create a box for this one. I'm going to make sure that the border weight is visible. And then I'm going to go back to text box and create another text box for this. And these are my choices now. And then I can go back to this text box and write. So I'd say this is box 2. You chose A. Now which do you choose? C or D? And then on this one, I would say box 3, make sure you label. You chose D. Now which do you choose? E or F? And then from there, you'll branch out again, label the boxes, so on and so forth. Again, I'm telling you this and I'm sharing this with you because it is so valuable that you organize your thoughts. You organize where the story is going to go and you label each box. Because then once we get into the Google Slides or Google Form portion, excuse me, you'll see that it's a valuable tool.
Mr. Tumminelli?
Yes, Ms.
Just to clarify, box 3, it's actually you chose B, right? Not D?
Oh, yeah, thank you. See, I know you can catch me on all my mistakes, Ms. Mama Brown. I appreciate that. Please continue to do so. Yes. So that is supposed to be B, but there you go. Any questions on the organization part? Again, this is probably one of the most vital parts here. Is there any questions you have on the organization of this and how it's set up? I don't imagine myself being that amazing in my presentation skills to be able to answer that. But probably as you go through, you may have questions. That's what the sandbox is for, and that's what I'm here for, to help you when you start building. Okay, so once you are done building, once you're done and set up and you've built something, I'm going to go back to the factory life again. You can see here's my factory life page. See what it looks like. It looks pretty complex where it goes. It's really not that complex. Again, if you label everything, now is the time where you're going to start using Google Forms. Now is the time where you're going to start using Google Forms. This is your final product, the thing that you're going to take with your student, give to your students. They're not going to see the Google drawing at all. Again, that's for you, but Google Form is the final product on the Choose Your Own Adventure activity. So some things I want you to consider, and then I'm going to walk you through really the tip of choosing your own adventure with a Google Form. So some things to consider. When you're using Google Draw as a guide, use your Google Draw as a guide to help build your form. So again, use those numbered labeled things when you're building your sections, and I'll show you what I mean here in a second. Use pictures. Again, this is a story. This is an adventure. Use pictures throughout. You'll notice on my Industrial Revolution one, you'll see a bunch of pictures for their choices. Have fun with that. I'll show you how you can put that in if you don't know how. And then finally, how do you assess your students? How do you look through? There's several ways you can do this, but if you're wanting just to see if they can make it to the end, if you're really wanting an assessment type, it's really difficult to go through and look at each submitted response on your Google form to see where students made it and if they made it through. And a lot of times Google form won't tell you if they made it through. They won't share that unless they made it all the way through. Maybe you want to instead see how long it took them or whatever. I recommend that you have on your last slide, the one that is the end that they made it through, you have some sort of picture of that they can take a screenshot of to prove that they made it to the end. So you could see the screenshot of the silly little picture I took in my classroom. I added this in kind of late, but I threw it into the form at the end because I didn't want to go through all the responses. So the last slide, I actually put a screenshot. I took a picture of myself looking silly and exhausted after a 16-hour workday, and they screenshotted that and put that in Google Classroom so that they could show that they actually completed the activity and got it done. That's a suggestion for you to make sure that you can look at and see, did you make it through? So they obviously wouldn't see that picture if they didn't make it through the end. So I'm going to try to show you as best I can using technology what you would do on a Google form now and how that would look. So just giving you those ideas to think about. I'm going to go to a blank Google form though to show you what that looks like. So I have my choose your own adventure example here. So your first section is the choose your own adventure example. In the description, you can write whatever you want, your directions. And then you get here where you want to write your choices. So first things first, you want to make sure your questions are multiple choice. You always want to make sure this is set as multiple choice. And it's nice to make it required so that students can't obviously jump ahead. They have to pick an answer to the question. You want to make it required. So when you go here, I'm going to go back to my example. And you see here, this is my example, choose A or B. What I usually do to make it easy on myself, when I wrote out as much as I could in all these boxes here, when I made it for the Industrial Revolution and my other ones, I just simply copy and paste. So I could copy here, go back, paste here, and then what I do is I'll do A, and then I'll go down to here and put B, and it automatically put it in for me, but there you go. So I have made my first section, my first, if you will, box. Now, I need to make box 2. Here's what I do. You're going to head on down to this side, and you're going to hit Add Section. It's going to create a brand new section. And you could say, title again, choose your own adventure. Example. So you're in section 2 of 2, and then you're going to hit add a question. And you have multiple choice. So now notice it's section 2 of 2. And I'm jumping back and forth between screens, so I hope this doesn't get too confusing. I'm not looking at questions yet, but I will. You'll see box 2. You'll see the section. Oh, okay, so I chose A. Now what do you choose? So I'll copy that over. We'll do C or D. I'll make it required. Very good. Your box number 2 is done. Now I want to make box 3. You add a section. Choose your own. Okay, I'm going to add the question again. Multiple choice, make it required. Go back to my organization. You chose B. Which ones do you choose? And it's E or F. There you go. And you so on and so forth. I'm going to add a section here for C, D, E, and F, just to show you. And I'm going to type in there so we can see it together once I show you what it looks like. You're going to go through all your sections, all your different boxes, no matter how many boxes you have. Again, with the Choose Your Own Adventure for Factory Life, I had about 19 boxes. You'll see here, page 19 I wrote out. Technically, actually, I only had 18. I made a mistake and missed number 11, which is not going to hurt you. If you just organize right, it doesn't hurt you, but I kind of screwed up a little bit. But I had 18 sections in the Choose Your Own Adventure for a Factory Life, 18. So it's going to build up pretty quick. But now I want to show you the key here on what you need to do for all of these. So, for example, we're going to start off, go back up to this question here. And you'll see here it says A or B. What you're going to want to do, and what we're going to be doing, is depending on the selection, what students choose, it's going to take them to a certain section. So if they chose A, obviously we want them to go to section 2. If they chose B, we wanted to take them to section 3. How do we do that is the question. And this is the big part right here. You go down to the 3 dots here at the bottom right, and you want to click that, and it'll say go to section based on answer. Pretty simple. So you hit that, and you'll see this new thing pop up on your question. So you'll see that A, you want to select. Which section do you want to go to? Well, I want them to go to 2 based on my organization. And where do I want answer B to go to? I want them to go to section 3. And then you go down here to section 2, and you'll do the same thing. So for this one, I'm going to go to section based on answer. I want to make sure I do this right. Box 3. So C or D is actually going to not go to box 3. They're going to go to 4 or 5 if I do this right. So I'm going to say go to section 4, go to section 5. Here, E and F, we're going to do that again. Section 6, section 7, and obviously you continue on with this. Now, this will, again, depending on the answer, take them to the correct section. So we could always test this. Remember with Google Forms, you could always look and see, hey, does this work? Does this make sense? Am I making this right? You can go to the preview button here at the top where the big eyeball is. If you choose the preview, here's what you see. So I say I chose B. You hit next. Oh, good. I went to B. Now what do you choose? E. Hit next. Oh, okay. It took me back. And you could obviously go back if you need to, so on and so forth. If you want to see it, I choose C. I usually allow them to go back. Obviously, if they get to a bad section, they can go back and rechange their answer for students. But you can see how it builds like that. You can see that it builds pretty easily like that. So, oops, let me make sure I do this right. Yes, leave. So I want to reiterate. couple things, and then I'm going to take some questions here. First things first, Google Draw. Google Draw or a pen and paper in front of you. If you're a person who likes to write things out, organize your thoughts and organize where it goes. Box 1, box 2, box 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I usually go just vertical like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Organize it where you can easily build those sections in the way you want. Then, to build the final product, make sure that you put all the sections in with all the responses, and then go back. You hit that go to section based on answer and choose the correct place that it goes to. Again, Google Draw will help you make that happen and make it look seamless and easy. So let me go into the questions here. I see I've got a couple here. Each box needs to be a section, not each level, right? Yes, Julie. So each box has to be a section. Yes, correct. Because if you do another question, it'll be on the same page. So I can show you a quick example here. Let's just say I added a question here to this. I want to show you what it looks like because it's important. So I add that, I go to the thing, you'll see here, there's question 1, there's question 2. You don't necessarily want that. You want them to be able to move. So when they select an answer and hit next, they go to another. Oops, I'm sorry. Let me show you the screen here. So you'll see it right here. You don't want those same questions on the same one. And it also would be really confusing for the form. You could screw up the form a little bit if you do that, or at least confuse it. So you don't want to really confuse it. It may cause a weird loop or a crash or something, or it may just not work the way you want. So you want to make sure each question is in its own section there. Can you continue using A and B options, the multiple choice options, for all multiple choice questions? If you so choose, yes, you can. You can keep choosing A or B as long as you've written that out on your Google Draw so you don't get confused yourself when you're building it, then you're fine. It's pretty on the student end, as you noticed when you guys went through it, it was pretty self-explanatory. It wasn't really difficult to navigate or go through. Everything that could happen is going to be on your end. You just want to make sure you're organized with your thought process, the story you want to go with, and organizing it with either Google Draw or those boxes if you write them out. So let me go back here to make sure that we're good. Oops. So that is the two things I want you to consider: Google Draw, Google Form. Before we head out to our break and come back and give you guys time to work, are there any other questions I can share with you on this deep dive into choosing your own adventure?
When you loop it, you're just looping it back to the first section?
What do you mean looping it?
When it would, like the one for the last picture when we were getting fired, it would then start over again. So you're just taking it back to section 1?
Yes. So you could do that, or if you want to loop it back to have them go back, you can. I usually just looped it back to section 1. Yeah, that was pretty easy. Or they could, if you wanted to tell them to restart, reopen the link, do it again, you can do it again that way too. Any way you want on that one, but you could always, yes, loop it back. So in this one, yeah, I had, let me show you. Here's what I built. So this is what it looks like on my end. So you can see this is the created one I created. You could see here's one of the fired sections. It'll say go back to section 1. So there you go. Any other questions?
Now, if we wanted to kind of record the kid's last name, first name, we can create sections above all this before it starts looping them in an adventure?
Correct. Yes, you can. So up at the top here, if you wanted to record their name, you would choose, your first section would actually be, name, class period, whatever you need. And then you don't have to hit, it'll just go on automatically to section 2. And then on section 2, you can have their answers based on where they go. Pretty easy. So you could start that whenever you really want. Good question. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, awesome.
Brian,
yeah.
I have a quick question. Were you able to add points to the screen here? I was looking at the work you were doing, so I didn't notice if you were able to add points to, we need a lot of motivation for kids sometimes, and it includes points.
I graded. So for this one, I graded separately. I first graded based on, you can see up here on this one, their responses. They had to get through it, and you could go through individually, which sometimes can be a pain.
Yeah.
which they made through. I've not, and I'm curious, and this is one thing I have not tested, and I don't know if it could, but you could try, is making this form like a quiz. So what you would do is like go to quizzes, make this a quiz, and you'll have the extra step then on choosing the point value for each question, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
And you'll have to go through that. I have not tried that, so I'm not going to say anything on that, but it'd be interesting to try out to see if it works. I simply graded it based on, this was more of a fun activity because I was testing it out. So I didn't really put too much emphasis on if they got it through or not. I just set a time limit and said, see if you can make it through. And I gave them like 10 minutes to have fun with it. They enjoyed it. Some got through, some didn't. We talked about, though, what was beneficial for this one was the breakdown at the end of what did you learn about factory life? What can we say about how difficult it was? Things like that. So that's just how I've used it. I've heard of teachers using it as an assessment. So some teacher I read online talked about how their goal, the student's goal was to get to the end. And once they got to the end, then they got their points. So there were some interesting things in there too. So yeah, if you try it, let me know how it goes.
All right. Thank you. I will. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. Anybody else? Questions? All right, you guys. Tell you what, it is 10:58, 10:59. We got here just on time. Perfect. We're going to take a 15